mostly, and maybe for others who can't join us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We welcome the honorary women, Thomas, Greg, and Bill, who are with us today, because we've already established that women make the world go round. No, Thomas and Greg and Bill, you guys are very
full members.
Glad to have you. Yes, full members. Good, good. Well, this is our Blandon Broadband Community Cohort meeting. We used to, do this in person, and pretty soon, one of these days, we're going to get out of our shells and actually meet up in person again. I'm actually having my first meeting tomorrow at Brood Awakening with a partner, an in-person meeting. So I'm preparing for that. It feels like a big change. But it is a lot easier, right, to get together. Here we all are. We can just take an hour and a half in the afternoon together from all our corners. So thank you so much for joining us today. We try to do these with our cohort, a couple times a year over the course of and just as a chance to touch base and kind of lean in a little bit and hear from one another. And so that's, I said early on as we hopped on, this is supposed to be a fun and inspiring meeting. We have nothing we have to accomplish. There's no bad news here. There's no wrist slapping or anything. It's just a chance for us to kind of hear from one another, especially us here at Blandon. We're really anxious to hear more about the stories. Lisa already shared a little one, so excited to learn more. And we're going to be together for about an hour and a half or so. We're going to do Mary's, thank you, Mary sent around an agenda. We're going to have a little check-in around how we use internet to enjoy the summer. And then have a couple of topics that we brought forward. We thought we'd want to hear from one another about strategizing for, maximizing the funding that's coming our way. Really interested to hear more from others about how people are organizing around that, what you're hearing, how we might be helpful, who others being helpful. And then we want to talk a little bit about in-person training, because that's always been the bread and butter, or one of the breads and butter of community broadband engagement, and just anxious as, kind of unevenly stepping back into a post or COVID plus world to kind of hear how folks are approaching that in their communities. And a little chance to reflect, and that's it. So it's a pretty, I hope it'll be a fun and engaging agenda. I've also got a little, I'm going to save my regional meeting opportunity kind of towards the end, because I don't want to get us distracted off the starting mark here. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and invite everybody to check in. I'm going to call on you first, Katie, and then I'm going to invite everybody to just call on the next person, so we make it as smooth as possible given our Zoom room here. So Katie.
Thanks,
How do you use the internet to better enjoy summer activities?
What a broad question. I mean, my kids will tell you that they're happy as they can be to be sitting on Netflix and playing video games all day, and while I'm, happily working hard here at work. But no, I don't know. We've been busy here in the Chisago Lakes area. All four of our projects are moving forward. Some of them have a much clearer path to completion than others, but to be honest with you, that balance is really nice. It's kind of cool that some of them we're learning as we go, and others it's just a very clear task list to chip off, and we're having a good time. So yeah, using internet to enjoy my summer. To be honest with you, I have been doing a lot more reading than watching, and that's my happy place. So Sarah, I'll call on you next.
Thanks, Katie. So just an update from Otter Tail County, same thing. Several of our projects are moving forward. We've gotten some dollars out the door to our local Boys and Girls Club and YMCA for some of their summer programming with youth, and helping to purchase some robots for their summer programming is kind of one of the most exciting ones, as well as our virtual career fair that we had partnered with Greater Fergus Falls on right before the end of the school year. Kind of did a push for that, and then that will return in the fall. And other things are just moving forward smoothly as well. trying to lay out a good timeline for the rest of those and figuring out what else we need to check boxes on. Similar things, some of them are repeat projects from last fall that we had carried out with CARES dollars. So we'll be relatively similar, and then a couple new ones as well. As far as using internet to enjoy summer activities, I would just say I do a lot of, exploring, whether that's hiking or biking or exploring lakes and things like that. So a lot of that is just mapping and using Google Maps and different map apps at some of our state parks and county parks and things like that. So that's how I use it. I would go ahead and maybe stick here in Otter Tail County and move on to Lisa Workman.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll answer the internet question as my lead. In Otter Tail County here, we are fortunate to have over 1,000 of Minnesota's lakes. And one of my favorite things to do in the summertime is to be lakeside, listening to music, or sitting on the dock or at a campfire listening to music. And I'm going to date myself, but we drag out a really long extension cord and a boom box and listen to, usually old 80s music on it. But this year now we have installed I don't know what the tech word is, a booster or a little box that is plugged into our shed that extends our internet. So now one of my favorite things to do has been streaming music down by the campfire and down by the lake, so that we have a little more variety to music, and we can do Pandora or Stingray or Sirius or whatever it is. It just gives us a little bit more variety when it comes to music. So that's been my most enjoyable use of internet this summer. And I'm going to toss it to Mary Magnuson.
Hi, everyone. I was just looking for a nice example for you all. So again, Mary Magnuson, I work at the Broadband Foundation. I'm the kind of the broadband program administrator. So I'm sure you've seen my names often on all the emails. But so what's helping me is that I found this app called PlantNet. And so I can take, pictures of plants around my yard, and it will tell me what it is. Like this wasn't, I knew what this was, that it was milkweed, but because I was taking a picture of all my caterpillars, but you just take a picture and upload it to this app and it'll tell you what it is. And so that has enhanced my enjoyment of the summer, because I can figure out, is that because one of the biggest questions I have when I'm weeding my garden is, are those ground cherries or is that one weed? Ground cherries also kind of look like nightshades to me, and there's another one. So that's really been super fun for me to be able to just snap a picture and figure out what something is. So that's how broadband improves my summer activities. Let's move on to Barbara.
So I am in Northern California, sitting in the sun. I'm gonna have to go to the sun in a little bit. And Carl is in Florida at the beach. So, and I talked to Benny yesterday about interviewing our fellowship candidate next week. And so we're in a little bit of a rest up and holding pattern, but boy, isn't it amazing what you can do now from the internet. I'm also a financial advisor, and it's amazing how much of the work now is not paper. Everything really escalated in the last year and a half to get a lot more stuff done online. So it's very cool and very fun to come out here and just see people and talk, and then get the paperwork done electronically afterwards. It's a huge, huge difference. So we're changing. We got a new county administrator on board. We're educating him about Blandon and broadband, and we're really moving ahead on economic development at the county level. So it's a very exciting time. And this month we're kind of resting up and re-engaging and connecting up through technology. Oh, so I will call on who I missed. Anne. No, we did Anne. Or no, we didn't.
All right. Hi. My connectivity is going from this to this every mile on the way home from downtown. So my favorite thing about broadband in the summer is what I'm doing right now. I'm having a Zoom meeting while I'm in Chicago. And you guys don't know the difference, except I'm in a car instead of walking. So, it's fun for everybody to hear all of the different stories. And as you know, I collect them all for the Blended on Broadband blog. So I'm looking forward to hearing more throughout the hour. And I think, did I see Nancy Hoffman? Are you here? Can I kick it to you next?
Hello, I'm Nancy Hoffman with Chisago County HRA EDA. And today I went on my first actual tour of our industrial parks and of our cities, where the last year I've been doing virtual tours. We had folks up from Deed here, Catalina Valencia, she's their new Minnesota marketing person, and she was just so much fun to go out and drive around and visit in person. So I can't believe how much I've missed it and how much I've missed seeing the whole county and the developments going on. And so it was a fun day and a beautiful day at that. One of the apps that I use in the summer is a fishing app. I forgot what it's called exactly, but it tells you, you pick a lake and then it tells you what time of day the fish will be biting the most. And it works. It actually works. So, you know, I plan my fishing trips around whatever it tells me to do, unless it's too early in the morning.
Well, you better send that to me, Nancy.
I will. Yeah, it's
And
wonderful.
Katie wants it too.
Yes.
So
let's
does
see how
Sarah. She just won't admit it.
So how about Thomas?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is probably the first official meeting I've actually been able to attend. I want to thank Courtney for always being available in my absence. Compliment with the White Earth Reservation tribal government regarding broadband use in the summertime. My kids hate me for this, but when it gets to be summertime, I'm like, okay, let's put the technology away and let's get outside. But you know, we still find ways to utilize internet in the summertime. Big on streaming music, whether it's at the cabin, whether it's just riding bike, on the kids' scooters, they're always streaming music. Another opportunity is my daughter's big into fitness tracking. She's always watching workout videos, following along with them, watching training videos with her volleyball and volleyball camps. My son's big into golf, uses the golf GPS app, utilizes the internet for golf analytics and score tracking and things like that. And then my wife and daughter, especially social media, nonstop. They're doing something. They're documenting with pictures and posts, and so they're always doing something with the Facebooks and Snapchats and Instagrams. So no matter what we're doing, I don't think we can get away from internet as much as we like to try or whatnot. But it's good to find ways to utilize that to keep, especially my kids, keep them active, keep them involved in their sporting activities when they're not around their teams or doing the official things like that. So for me, that's kind of how myself and my family utilize internet. And of course, I'll just kick it over to Courtney.
Hey guys, I'm sorry I'm driving, so I'm not gonna turn my video on. But actually I am not even working with economic development anymore, but I'm gonna stay on the Broadband steering committee with Tom and still continue to work on the grant with him and implement the projects. I switched over to the behavioral health division last week with a new position. So I will be the behavioral health rep under the grant, I guess. I know my biography isn't in the application or anything, but I'll be the go-to person for that. Still working side by side with Tom on this. And yeah, same thing. My kids, I try to get them out outside as much as possible, but even when we're at the lake, we're always snapping pictures and posting them, and the kids are always doing the same. And of course, they play their video games. But all my kids are actually in a STEAM camp this summer, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, which I think they're enjoying. They're taking a lot of field trips and stuff. So I mean, they get away from it a little bit, but they're also at school at the same time utilizing it. So. And I'm going to pick Bill.
Thank you, Courtney. I think I've been traveling a lot now already this summer. I was just in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, New Mexico over the weekend, and I was in Spokane a couple weeks earlier. And, all the travel information in terms of mapping and places to go and eat and so on seemed to be quite valuable. I did the funniest thing on a, flying into Albuquerque, and I thought, well, I'm going to print out the directions to my friend's house, because and it was a disaster, So of course, I'm driving. My wife is supposed to be in charge of the directions, and she's on her phone doing other things. And so when it comes time, when's the next turn, she can't find it on the printed directions. So that was a disaster. So stick with the new ways, forget the old ways. And I'm sorry, I had to take a call.
I don't think we've heard from Greg yet. Greg, are you with us? Can you check in?
Greg must be on it.
Yep, I'm here. So I'm a late adopter of Zoom via iPhone. So I apologize for just having my first name. I typed in my first name, and now I don't know how to add my last name. So I'm Greg Wagner from West Central Initiative, based in Fergus Falls. I'm the Director of Business and Economic Development, serving the 9 counties of West Central Minnesota. And so internet in our summer, thanks to my wife, who heavily utilized the internet to plan a family road trip to kick off our summer to the great state of Utah. We visited the Mighty 5 national parks. We pulled the kids out of school early. And it was kind of as what others have alluded to, kind of a love-hate relationship with the internet, because driving through South Dakota, Wyoming, and even parts of Utah, access to the internet was very limited. So we couldn't even use it if we wanted to it. But the advanced trip planning that my wife did with the internet allowed us to have a great uneventful in a negative way trip. So I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Thanks, Greg.
Whoever changed my name, thank you.
There we go. As Mary did that for you.
Mary.
Yeah. We were having at the beginning, Bill was giving us some tips on advanced Zoom usage, Greg. So he's always learning, Bill, dragging us, the rest of us along with him, right? So I won't talk about trip planning. Because that's the same as others. I'm planning a graveyard tour of Nebraska ancestral burial grounds in July. I'm really excited about that. And without the internet, I don't know how I would plan that trip, Anyway, it's a big, it's very reassuring. But what I will say is a different app that I use a lot in the summer is an app that you can map trails. So we have some land and I've been making trails. And you can actually, if you use it and then walk, it'll map that on your land, so you can make your own trail map of your trails. That's been very cool, because in the past I've always been, with the, trying to do it by hand, and then anyway, so that's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks. I think, did we get everybody? Did we miss any check-inners? Thanks for that. And some of you folks took an opportunity in the check-in to talk a little bit about update from what's going on in your program. So before we move on, I just wanted to pause. Is there anybody that would like to add in or pile on about work? Because the rest of the agenda, we're not really, updating on how your projects are going, but some of you did that. So just wanted to pause if anybody has anything else that they wanted to add, and be sure to share that's happening in terms of your BBC work.
I got one. I don't know if it was just BBC, but we were happy to hear, was that today, Katie, or yesterday, that Mid-Continent is going to be putting in broadband in Chisago Lake Township. In many of the areas, they have an RDOF area right there, but this is outside of that. And they're not looking for funding, they're just doing it. So we kind of want to say that was because we visited with them. Maybe they had a plan before, I don't know, but we'll take credit for it. Because we have visited with them and we let them know we really want them to work here and work here early. And we'll be happy to work with them and maybe help finance some of it as they move out, so that we get everybody covered.
That is big news. Is that the whole township? The whole township used to talk about, I always quote Nancy, do we really have to solve this township by township people? And now we're talking about part of a township, or is it the whole township?
No, it's part of a township.
Yeah.
They are already in the township, some in the more populated areas around like Lindstrom, yeah, Katie's covered already. So they're just kind of expanding that out, which is great. And they can just keep expanding that out.
Yeah.
That was part of, I wanted to jump in on that too, Nancy, and I'm very proud of that. I'm not quite sure how much is braggable and how much is somebody else's work that just feels like I want to take credit for it. But this was one of these like feasibility studies, and we went after state funding for this community for a long time and didn't get it. And now all of a sudden it's like that somebody just flicked that magic wand, and I got to call a friend of mine yesterday that lives in one of these places, and I was like, so I have news. And it's a little bizarre how excited I get about this, but this is what she said. I was like, so guess what? I said, Mid-Continent is coming to your neighborhood. And her answer was, kick ass. Yes. So I'm excited to get to deliver that message to many people. And yeah, I'm definitely happy to say this was somebody else's work as a precursor, but I think that our cohort got together with the Mid-Continent service provider, the government relations person, and said, listen, we really want to partner. We want to make ourselves very clear that we're here to be in support of you, to partner with you, to help build this relationship, but we want to be at the top of your punch list. And here we are. It's exciting.
Congratulations. That is terrific. Yeah. Anybody else?
This is Barbara. I'll just add that 2 weeks ago, I met with all of the city and county elected officials, and we talked about broadband, and it was great. And then when I get back next week, all the township officials were going to meet. And so we're still not sure. We're very much an RDOF area, and we're still not sure what the wild card is for that, but we're kind of gearing ourselves up for the what ifs. And so that's what we'll be doing this summer, is having those discussions, figuring out what we need for infrastructure. Should we be able to move ahead once we get the RDOF thing figured out? But yeah, it's been very good. The discussions are very good.
And Barbara, please tell the group about the Lee Sewer County Summit.
Oh yes, thank you. And we're working with Southern Minnesota Initiative Fund. This is a Blandon proposal, though, is we're getting everybody in the county together that's interested in economic development and talking about who are we and how we should be moving ahead and what can we be doing. My first meeting, it's a hard thing to say, but the Green Giant is dead, and we have a lot more going than that. And it's a very exciting time to have that discussion with so much in flux with economic development. And so, yeah, that's going to be happening on July 15th. Very cool.
I hadn't heard that news about the Green Giant.
Oh, he's been dead. There hasn't been Green Giant in Lee Sewer for, well, they were sold in the 1990s, and then they went up to Pillsbury, but there's nothing at all Green Giant in Lee Sewer. It hasn't been for 10 or 15 years. He's dead, completely dead. And yet we're the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah, gosh, good. Anybody else have news or updates on their work before we move on?
I would just add Otter Tail County has definitely looked at and had some high level conversations at both the county level and then kind of briefly with our cities about how to leverage both what we have left for Blandon as well as some of the ARP dollars coming down from the federal level and then whatever else is coming down the pipeline. So Amy Baldwin, my colleague, kind of is keyed in more to that, but that has definitely been on our radar as well to try and continue some of these Blandon projects into the future with those federal dollars and how to just get, fiber in the ground with those dollars as well. So big things coming down the pipeline with that.
Lisa, go ahead. Got your hand up?
Sure, this isn't necessarily an update on specific projects, but it should hopefully in the long term help a lot of us. We work, not only at the local level, but also, representing our members at state and even federal level where we have connections. And we were fortunate enough today to have the CEO of Lake Region Healthcare, Kent Madsen, was testifying before and I'm looking at my notes because I want to get this right, the U.S. House Agricultural Subcommittee, and they were talking about examining opportunities for growth and investment for rural America. And one of the things that he spoke on at the subcommittee was on broadband access and how telehealth has made it so that rural healthcare providers were able to provide more services, and that they, as a healthcare organization, are equipped to handle it. But the extreme need for broadband and more broadband in the rural areas and to allow their patients to reach them to provide those services, as well as accessing specialists from around the region versus having to relocate, every single specialist for their patients. So I thought that was very top of mind and appropriate for this group to share because that subcommittee meeting was just 4 hours ago.
Wow. Thanks, Lisa. And that reminds me, maybe be just piggybacking on that, of interest to note that so there's a federal office called the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, and they have a few national rural health research centers, one of which is here in Duluth, Minnesota. And they have an annual meeting, the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, to try to promote collaboration between the private sector and the public sector and the federal government. And this year's topic was broadband and telehealth. So, and they invited Blandon to come and talk about that. And they really noticed how in the past that telehealth had always been sort of an asterisk footnote. But now as telehealth is really becoming much more visible and recognized as for its cost efficiency. And now there's data that shows from a patient perspective that people are just as satisfied in their telehealth experience as they are in person, and sometimes even more so, given, depending on what their affliction is, whatever. And so it was really fun to see these policy, health policy wonks have their eyes open to community broadband imperative. And, you'd think it would be clear that, if you're trying to do telehealth, if you don't have the tele part, you can't do that. But it really has become much more centralized in their consciousness. And the other thing I'll mention, Lisa, prompted by you, is in preparation for that meeting, I was back in touch with colleagues of ours down in Region 9. Some of you may know Christian Brocken there, who's the geekiest data wonk we're lucky to have in the state of Minnesota. If you ever want to talk about regression analysis or, he's your guy. They got a Blandon grant last year to do mental health counseling in their very rural counties. And it's been a tremendous success. Of course, it was well-timed because just pre-COVID. But the challenge that they're trying to figure out is how to help grow homegrown mental health providers and not rely on city-based providers, because in that model, it was a Twin Cities-based health provider that, through accommodations and setting up these little telehealth booths and partnerships and stuff, they're able to serve into rural, but not with rural providers. So there's still that, that problem of workforce attraction and retention, but because of broadband connection, they were able to offer telemental health during a real time of crisis, they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Yeah. Good. So Sarah, thanks for your comments. You kind of segued us to our discussion question. We were going to talk about local strategies for maximizing available broadband funding. And I think we're all aware of this, as I like to call it, the tsunami of resources coming our way. Blennon has had a couple of speakers that come and talk to her. We're doing an accelerate cohort and come and talk about federal and state resources. And I've sat in on a few webinars at NDIA and others, and some of the law firms trying to help us all parse all this money coming. But let's take a few minutes and kind of go around the horn, and we'll start with you, Thomas, and your team. What kind of conversations are you having in your county about federal dollars and state dollars, and what are you thinking? What is the county asking from you, and what are you going to do?
Well, we are, I should say me specifically, we haven't had a lot of conversations with the county. Our thing right now is internally. There's a lot of internal discussion. I mean, we're a rather large organization with about 1,000 employees. Within that, there's, I think, about 16 different divisions right now. So the division directors have been tasked with putting together their quote unquote wish list for possible ARP funding expenditures. So we're working on that right now. Obviously, each individual division has different wants and needs and hopes and dreams of how they want to utilize this funding. So we're in the early stages right now, putting those together. We have a directors meeting tentatively scheduled for tomorrow morning, where we're going to bring most of those ideas to the front court, and then we're going to have these conversations with our CFO, our legal team, and figure out, what projects are specifically going to fall underneath, the required types of expenditures that we can have. So right now we're at the early stages of internal discussions, and we haven't had a whole lot of, I've had a few conversations with like say the Monoman City Administrator and things like that, but nothing too formal, too official. It's been a lot of internal discussion right now. You're on mute.
Thomas, yeah, sorry, if I could, if you don't mind, there's quite a bit of funding that's earmarked for tribes and tribal communities.
Yep.
Where does your tribal government turn to for help to figure that out? Do you guys look to any kind of help to figure out where are the front doors?
Regarding anything specifically, Bernadine, or is it just like?
Well, I mean, I don't even know what are the pots, but that there is money for, especially for tribes and technology and broadband.
Yep. Well, right now it's we have a very good legal team right now that kind of heads that up for us. We have a ballpark idea of what we're supposed to be receiving and when we're supposed to be receiving it. We haven't heard the official numbers just yet, but our legal team typically handles those types of questions and answers, and they do a lot of our legwork for us to find out the availability, what it can be spent on, what we need to do to get our hands on it. So, I mean, we're anticipating a substantial pool of money coming our way in the very near future. I believe some of it has already hit, and I think that was about a week and a half ago that we've seen the first lump sum coming in. But we have a dollar amount that we're expecting to see, and within that dollar amount, there are some things earmarked for whether it's infrastructure or other different areas. But for the most part, what we've been told on our end is that this round of money is going to be a lot easier. Last time it seemed like we were really handcuffed with what we could put that money towards. This time it sounds like it's going to be more open, that there's going to be a larger opportunity to use some of that funding.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Thomas. Courtney, did you want to add anything from your perspective?
I don't think so. Tom gets quite a bit more info than I do. So
sure.
Yeah, basically just waiting on that match so we can implement our projects. And I know we get direction from the tribal council and from administration above us, and also we take input from community members too. So it takes a little bit to get all that information processed and to figure out what works best for each community.
For sure. Greg, how about from your perspective, where you sit at West Central there, are you aware of conversations going on in your region across counties or jurisdictions about federal funding? And
Just a lot of anticipation and I guess a bit of relief in knowing that there's a little bit of a lengthier time frame to decide what to do with this federal funding and to actually distribute it. We've been having some conversations with governmental entities, like what role WCI is going to have. We've also been talking to the state of Minnesota, as us and the other Minnesota Initiative foundations were relied pretty heavily on to help disperse CARES Act funding. And so we're anticipating that we'll even have some more federal dollars. And then additionally, the regional development organizations who WCI kind of has a toe in the Initiative Foundation side and the regional development organization side. Federal EDA, especially who the RDOs, regional development organizations, have a big, strong relationship with, is getting a lot of infrastructure dollars too. And what we're still waiting on the funding opportunity announcements for what those can be used for and those dynamics. So I think it sounds like it's a lot of wait and see like everybody else, but I know there's a lot of discussion about, as Tom had mentioned, the infrastructure just in general, and especially broadband strategies for utilizing the funds.
mm-hmm. And thank you, Greg. Do you have a sense of, are the county boards or township supervisors looking to local economic development professionals for input? Courtney mentioned community input, but do you know if there's any sort of advisory going on or idea generation?
I think not a whole lot at this point, especially at the township level. I've talked to just less than a handful of township folks. I think that there's a good opportunity for messaging regarding broadband, especially because what I've heard is, oh, we got all this other money last year and we fixed our roads and we got some new equipment, and so we're good. I don't think we have a lot of use. So obviously then that funding goes back to the county. So I think definitely some messaging needs to happen once there's some more parameters established. I know there's a lot of businesses thinking there's going to be more grants. I don't foresee that happening, but I know there's a lot of interest in grant access too.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, I know, despite our jokes about township by township, I don't know if it was you that I heard this from, but some people were talking about, and Greg points out that if the townships don't encumber the money, it rolls back up to the county, and that maybe it would be more efficient from a county perspective, because you don't usually build networks township by township, and you can't really do that much with that small, instead it might make more sense to have all that township money in a big pool with the county money for broadband infrastructure rather than it being parceled out at the township level. Do you have any reflections on that, Nancy?
Yeah, and actually it doesn't go right up to the county this time unless they choose to. It states in there that they can choose who it would go to if they don't spend it. It isn't an automatic like last time. If they didn't spend it, it could go to the county. But that's a good choice, and hopefully they would want to do that. We're trying to educate the townships on how it can be used, but we don't know for sure either. We don't have all the rules yet. I do know our county plans to use the great majority of their money on broadband because they don't have a need for some of the other things that are needed. There's a couple townships that need to get water, or cities that need to get water across I-35, and that might be a good use of the funds. But other than that, I just keep hearing broadband. There might be some other projects out there. The county at first was talking about having like a matching grant program for the township, so they'd put in so much and then the county would put in so much. I don't know if, I haven't talked to them for a while about it, so I don't know if that's still the goal. I did call Bill because Hometown Fiber contacted the county, and I guess they put in the backbone, that would be with funding from the county. See a lot of heads shaking, you probably know more than me. They called the county administrator, so I wasn't in on the phone call, but he was very excited about it by the time they were done with the conversation. So that might be another option as well. Otherwise, we've been talking to the 3 RDOF. We have CenturyLink, who has some RDOF areas up where they already worked. So I'm thinking that seems like a natural to me. Mid-Continent and then Windstream. And we've talked to all of them about it, and hope to work with them, or maybe we can do this hometown fiber thing.
And it's when you say hope to work with them with the county money, and I guess this goes a question to all of you guys. Do you then see your role is the deal making, right? Getting the provider and figuring out the geography, that whole figuring out what the project would be? Is that where you see your role then?
Yeah, I see it kind of like the other townships that we worked with being a percentage of the project. You know, if there's some that are more expensive, we might even want to apply for border-to-border broadband grants. You know, if we need that extra to make the project work, so we could help facilitate that as we have with some other projects. Yep. Hopefully they won't ask for too much, so it'll just be easy and we'll get it in and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, from where you sit, what do you hear about talking about the buzz around the federal funding coming and how your role or the county could help get that figured out?
I think what we're hearing in Fergus Falls and Ottertail County, and Sarah could probably confirm this too, is the priority of the funds would be going towards broadband projects. I don't know exactly what that means, but we know that there's still a dramatic need for it, especially as in rural areas. And as far, sometimes as far as the chamber, our role in it would be to help with those collaborations, getting some of the right partners at the table, or, some of the right people within organizations, whether it's workforce related, whether it's job seekers, employees, and healthcare, it's education. There's a variety of pieces that are going to fit into that, and chambers, we're connectors, much like I think everyone on this call here, good connectors.
It's interesting how different approaches, right? The push pull or the carrot or stick, or how prescriptive. So I was on because of the heightened interest and awareness of the role of broadband in economic development and community vitality that we've all experienced, that kind of wind at our backs as we're doing this work now. Blenheim has gotten a lot of requests to speak nationally on our work. Community broadband is suddenly a big hot topic. So I've been in rooms with people from other regions and other parts of the country. And so because of that, I happen to know that in Washington State, where of course I'm a big fan of their broadband officer there. They've got a firecracker. Russ Elliott is just burning it up out there in Washington State. And I don't know if it's because of him, but every county in Washington State was told by the state, and I know we don't like that in Minnesota, that they had to set up a broadband advisory group, kind of like you guys, for the county. A citizens group. They're supposed to constitute like a citizens input group to provide input and advice and guidance to their county board about broadband investments. So that's, that was an approach in Washington. Thou county boards, thou shalt talk to your residents and get their ideas and input about needs and opportunities for broadband. So it's interesting to see in Minnesota how that's being done, so differently place to place. I know I got a call from IEDC, Itasca Economic Development Corporation director, who's, you know, realizing that it's kind of like everyone's looking to her to put these projects together. The county wants broadband projects. And she's like, well, we need a provider partner. It's the same old having to do the deal. So I was curious to see if you guys see you are them. I mean, that you're the people that your counties and are looking to help figure out these projects.
I definitely
Well,
feel like in some circles we're looked at as that resource, but I can't quite thank you enough for being so readily available. There's been a number of different things that have come up in our conversations where we're like, I don't know, but we've got Bernadine. Let's just ask her. Or we've got Bill. Let's just bring him in. Or let's check with Mary on that, or Ann. And I think you guys have really done a beautiful job of allowing, like, empowering us to go out there and become that resource for our community, but also in providing a really stable safety net so that we just still look good, even if we don't know what we're doing.
Mm. Well, I hope that one of our big accomplishments in this work altogether is to encourage that there are no dumb questions, right? And we're all always learning. And taught us that we're always, you know, on our way to graduate school. We're never quite graduated. Yeah.
well, in
No.
LeSueur County, I just wanted to add about the federal dollars. It's not clear to me either, Nancy, how are the dollars going to roll up? And can they just write a check to the county like they did last time, or is it going to be more complicated? So one of the things in the back of our minds is we need to do a joint powers board to pull all the money together. And would have the time to do it. But my hope this time is that it won't be the fragmented rush without RFPs, without contracts. I've had this conversation with Deed, and they have an RFP template that you can use. The contract management part that the border to border does, we don't have the capacity for that at our level, but we need that. We can't just do that on our own. And I've noticed the federal dollars will allow you to pay for someone to do contract management. So do we bring in an engineering firm that would do the contract management for us to make sure that the work gets done right and all that? Because we ran by the seat of our pants last time, and we can't do that this time. It's a lot more money. But the other variable for us is LTD is the only RDOF vendor. I've had several conversations with them. They don't know for sure they're getting the money till September. And so until then, don't really know about being able to partner with them. So if anything will get done this year is a big question mark. And if it did get done this year, would there be the equipment and the materials and the labor to do it? There's gonna be a big push for that too. So we have one township that's ready and mapped out border to border every household. And I'm like, wait, we don't know what the map looks like yet. We don't, and I have townships ready to levy for the dollars on top of it. But because of the RDOF issue, we really can't move ahead and make plans or know if we'll ever get a border to border grant again. So we're planning and laying the groundwork and having thoughts about the infrastructure to be ready to do it should the push come next year. But it's very hard because people know there's a lot of money coming. People are really impatient, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions about the how-tos.
So let me ask you guys, tribal and county officials and chamber leaders, when it's like in this soup, who do you look to for help? Like, is the Association of Minnesota Counties, is the Association of Townships, League of Cities? Who else? Who's helping or could or should?
Let me add that all of the cities in our county, ironically, are now upgrading to MetroNet from Midco. They're going through the process of signing up and getting better fiber in the cities as well, which is another variable here. League of Cities has been fabulous in helping and consulting about that. AMC is great, figuring out every step of the way what's going to happen. And Nancy invited me to join that group on economic development. They're huge help for us, but there's still just a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay.
And Deed, but Deed's flying kind of, where's their role going to be in the future?
Yeah.
We call you when we have questions.
Well, I mean, you know, Thomas, I mean, just for example, so we, a business about, you know, tribal resources and stuff, and we're trying to figure out, you know, like who's here to help, and reaching out to OBD and asking about, is the state doing anything, and just, so, you know, you don't want to be inappropriate, and I mean, we don't know that much either. We'd have to find people that did, but yeah, just aware that there are a lot of unanswered questions, and our team didn't have a good of a sense of if you guys are feeling you know, cast out there without any support, or if you feel like there are people you can ask and get advice from.
No, absolutely not. I think our leadership team, our elected officials, and our legal team have a good understanding of what to expect, what's coming down the pipeline, and we have no concerns right now.
Okay, good.
Okay. We talked about kind of a feasibility study for the whole Chisago Lakes area, and Bill provided a really good list of consultants. And so we're thinking about doing something like that, just because it is so big and we don't know what we don't know. And, you know, we might think, let's just work with Mid-Continent, but maybe there's a better way for us to get it done.
Okay.
Well, and I have Chris from Finley on speed dial. I check in with him all the time, and he goes and looks at the RDOF. He goes, nope, that's going to happen. He goes and looks at this. Nope, that's not going to happen. So he's been a great advisor all along. I check with him quite regularly because we had the whole county feasibility study done. Oh, okay. Chris from, okay. Good from Finley. Good to get a reference. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Anything else anybody wants to share? Talk about funding availability and options before we move on. Bill, did you have any words you wanted to share about this before we move on? You're muted, Bill.
I'm sorry. I've heard some people talking, and I thought I heard this out of Barbara's mouth, that let's hurry and get things done before, while RDOF is not signed, to get things, you know, to use recovery dollars to contract with providers who are non-RDOF winners while the FCC is monkeying around doing their analysis. And then you're not duplicating. Maybe I didn't hear that from you, Barbara, but
oh no, you heard that probably 3 months ago, and that's just changed because they keep pushing it out and pushing it out, and you can't really have a real conversation with LTD until September. So it's pushed it out a lot further than I would have thought, and it's a lot of money for us. It's a lot of money sitting with LTD.
All right. In-person digital training. Just this morning, was on a call with some folks looking at a grant proposal idea up here on the Arrowhead to do tech assessments, small business utilization programs, and that's just the heartbeat of adoption and use. And so just really curious as people look ahead towards the summer, you know, what, where are you at on your in-person stuff, and who's deciding, and how are you deciding, and what is it looking about to try to do, gearing up for, we heard about summer camps. Sarah, you were talking about using technology in camps. You want to start out with us? What's the scene for in-person digital stuff in your part of the world?
Yeah, so we've seen when it works, we've seen kind of people start to adopt that. So chamber meetings, we obviously internal meetings here at the county, we are more in person, but we've seen more of that get adopted, but still seen a lot of people have interest in a virtual option now that everyone has it. But lots of the things, you know, the childcare things that have been in person and have been going forward are somewhat returning to normal. and broadband or internet has just kind of made that come in as a complement, maybe. So that technology that we did with summer camps has just kind of presented a new option. Obviously, it's still happening in person, but presented another opportunity in person to do virtual, to do tech kind of things. If that's kind of the answer you're looking for, Bernadine.
So community ed in your community, they are having in-person
Yep.
events this summer.
Yep.
Okay.
And we've seen, like Lions clubs and chamber meetings and things like that are beginning to return. We just had our Fergus Falls just had their kind of summer festival, Summerfest this past weekend, and saw a really great turnout of a large crowd. And so things are slowly and progressively starting to come back in person. And I think our public health director has kind of still messaged, there are still prevention and mitigation things that we can be doing, but with numbers so low, it looks a little bit more normal up here.
I just heard today that we had the highest deaths in a couple of weeks here in Minnesota again today. Lisa, what would you add from your perspective about in-person stuff? And
Yeah, so from the chamber's perspective, statewide, we've been fortunate enough to have a couple training conferences or training meetings in person. So those who could travel did. Had a great training meeting in St. Cloud, and there was social distancing, but they also offered a virtual method. So that's been nice when organizations have been able to offer that. Locally, we're going back to, again, as Sarah mentioned, in-person both meetings, and we did it for us, it was our board that determined, yep, let's go back to in-person and meet face-to-face, just because we're all here in Fergus Falls. But when there's time or, miles between, it just makes that option nice. And again, for in-person activities, those things are coming back. It seems like full on, but then I also pull in the piece of we've learned a lot along the way. As Sarah mentioned, Summerfest, I noticed how much, digital, where people just had to put their phone to purchase food, or, what I mean? Like all the payment processing being all digital or online or touch free, that type of thing. So yeah, we're looking forward to a few more in-person things, and but again, still picking up what we've learned in the past.
Thanks, Lisa. Thomas, what's the scene on how's the council looking at this at the reservation?
They're very eager to get back to basically 100% back in the offices, in-person type stuff. However, they're doing it with some caution right now. I think they understand that even though we want to get back to full normalcy, that the rest of the world isn't really at that level yet. Just speaking, like, say, for Courtney, for instance, they can call her back to the office full time, but, she still has childcare issues where, her childcare is at 50% capacity yet. Her kids can only go 2 days a week. So we're still being mindful of that type of a thing. I think it was April 26th was the official recall date for management level and up. So we were kind of called back to the offices if you were in that management title or higher. We're still looking at like a July 1st, fully bringing everyone back. With that being said, there is still the mindset there's going to be some flexibility. There's going to be some leniency. They're kind of leaving it up to each divisional director how they want to handle that, whether it's going to be all staff on site all time, or if it's going to be 50% of your staff 3 days a week, the other 50% 2 days a week, and then flip flop at the next week. So there is going to be some leniency there. I'd like others have mentioned, we did realize that, technology is a good thing. And just for funding reasons, our organization is spread out throughout the entire reservation in multiple different communities. So a lot of the times virtual meetings still make a lot of sense, whether, we can be in person together or not. We cut down on that, the spending for mileage and things like that. So I think virtual is still going to be a huge option for us. Even when we're back to full 100% capacity on site. Our biggest challenge is, even if we're on site, our tribal buildings, our tribal government offices, we have great access to internet, broadband, things like that. However, when we make a lot of decisions on the reservation, we're getting community input. And that's where we hurt the most right now without having in-person, face-to-face community meetings. A lot of our community members don't have access to internet if they're not in a tribal building. So that's one of the issues that we're dealing with right now as we transition back to, full-time 100% in offices, face-to-face meetings and things like that. So we're still kind of tiptoeing around that. But I think July 1st is kind of a targeted deadline to get everything back on track, and we'll just kind of go from there. And obviously, they've thrown out dates in the past too that have, had that been pushed back for multiple different reasons, whether we see an uptick in, active cases of COVID, or, we're deeming things risks or whatever. So, it's kind of a fluid date, but we're looking at July 1st.
Okay, good. Katie, what about Chisago Lake?
I very much feel like the energy around here is towards opening back up. We've been having a lot more in-person meetings. People are excited and eager about that. I think that throughout this whole thing, and we kind of touched on it a little bit before, there are some pockets of industry and life that actually make great sense online. Telehealth being one of them. So there's some things that I just don't see going back to the way that they once were. Similarly, I think this sort of hybrid, some people are in person, some people are online. At least in a lot of the meetings I've been to, it just doesn't work. You end up leaving some people out of the conversation, or the connectivity isn't there. They can't hear the questions that are being asked in the room, or, whatever. So I'm hearing conversations about possible get-togethers, and just saying either let's keep it all online or everybody in person. We had that request for one of our chamber luncheons recently, and either you can be there or you can't. I mean, that's kind of how we're looking at it. Another thing that we're really experiencing here in the Chisago Lakes area, and I don't know if it's unique to us or if you're all feeling it too in your communities, but I think due to our proximity to the Twin Cities, we have a booming real estate market right now. And I am getting telephone calls from real estate agents from all over the Twin Cities wondering what's the internet situation. And specifically, I'm saying, well, send me the address of the house you're talking about, because I can give you a really good idea of whether or not you're going to be connected or not. Those are the kinds of questions that truly I've had multiple of. And that's an interesting perspective that I don't know if other people are experiencing, or quite frankly, if the decision makers are even considering. But we have a lot of people moving into our area right now that are getting here, finding their dream home, elated about the idea of a lack of commute and buying a home on the lake or living in a rural setting, only to find out that they can't connect. So that's something that comes across my desk on a weekly basis, I'd say.
Barb, did you want to comment? Anybody want to react?
I would add to that we actually did a map of new kind of what we're using for our housing development tracking is new septic systems in rural areas within the county. And that map kind of showed in the areas that we have better broadband service is where more housing developments are happening. So just echoing what Katie, I don't know that Amy Baldwin fields those calls as often, but we definitely are hearing those questions of, is it available? Where is it available? Where can we go to get it? And if it's not available at my house, where are the other options that I can get it at if I'm working remotely or doing whatever? So.
Well,
that's on our,
like Sarah just said too, I think it's due to this entire project, the last couple of years of working amongst all of you, that I even feel capable of answering those questions. So Sarah, like you said, you guys have pulled that data and you've created that map so that you can be a resource to people that live there or that are potentially moving in. And again, it's just something I never would have even foreseen had it not been for this project. So timing was good. Sorry, Barb, go ahead.
That's okay. Our county at the last city and county officials meeting asked the cities how many vacant lots they have left for building, and there's very, very few. They've mostly been bought up or so development is, and we don't have any new developments planned as yet, but I think the difference is going to be this time is, as you're doing in many other places, is you lay the fiber as you're doing your housing development, and you do, it's a part of the planning process. So that as we're doing all this broadband planning, if there's gonna be development somewhere, let's make sure they have fiber too. Yeah, we're getting built out as well.
So I want to take advantage of this kind of co-learning group here to share in response, Kay, to what you said about hybrid, not so much, not working that well, and get some, maybe some advice from you. So I've always, as a meeting facilitator, organizer, whatever, often at the front of the room, so to speak, hate hybrid meetings. I hate it because I can see the people in you know, and I'm like attending to the people around the table. And it's always just really unsatisfying to attend to that other person. You never feel like they're adequately engaged. It's hard for them to hear the questions. It's disruptive. And I feel like it's a diminished experience for those of us that are in person. It's a diminished experience for the remote person. I get that. And now here's my dilemma. So it really has an impact on accessibility and access. So I'm a member of the Grand Rapids Human Rights Commission, new member, and I've only been to 3 meet every month. And it was a very political here in Itasca County. People were angry at the county and the city. Well, actually the city was, so the city, for the restrictions. So, you know, you had to wear a mask, you couldn't come in, no in-person meetings. They went everything online. So city council meetings, the commission, Human Rights Commission, everything online. And a lot of people were like, you know, they didn't like that. And the private sector was all open, and couldn't the city please open up? So when they finally did, now after the governor, you know, after the CDC came out and the governor lifted restrictions, they've opened City Hall, but they have gone completely to the edge of kind of orthodoxy about this, and there will not be hybrid meetings. They've said we will not offer the remote option. So at my Human Rights Commission meeting, we have a mother who couldn't make it because of childcare. I mean, this is real, right? I mean, and she was unable to come last minute, something, and was unable to come because she couldn't get childcare. And the city refused on principle. No, we will not make the meeting participation optional virtually. And it's almost like they did that at us. You know what I mean? Like there was kind of an agenda that I don't know, but it felt like it. It was like, so I don't.
To me, that just sounds like poor customer service. I mean, don't get me wrong. If your expectations are set up that we are going to have a virtual option, you need to understand that if you choose to join us virtually while there are people in the room, you may have a compromised experience. If you can be here, please be here. But if you have somebody that's interested in being a part of the meeting and simply cannot, I don't see anything wrong with having that option as long as the expectations are set forth. That sounds like they're trying to make a point. They've got their heels dug in,
yeah,
and they are going to let their customer service go on behalf of just making their point. Thank you very much. And the other thing I'm thinking though too, as you're talking, Bernadine, is like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, now you just said that the numbers are back up in the state. I feel like COVID in its own way is sort of yesterday's news. And I feel like just as people are fickle with their opinions or whatever it is that they're out there learning about, this seems like something, it's just simply in the rear view for at least a lot of people that I come in contact with. Are you guys all finding that too?
We have very high rates of low rates of vaccination and high rates of infection in our county.
Well,
the people don't. It's like
actually
they don't care. Like
we're at an 8.1 right now, a 10-day rate according to ICTV today. Over 12, I think we have 53%. So not great, but it's hopefully getting a little better.
Katie, this,
to the latest.
Sorry, Mary. This is Greg from West Central. So I concur with you. COVID is kind of in the rearview mirror for lots of folks in our region. I mean, that's, maybe Sarah or Lisa or someone else may disagree with me, but it's like, it's second thought now. And then to kind of just touch on Bernadine's question, we've taken I guess a blended approach versus a hybrid approach for meetings. Our board of directors especially has, being that we're a regional entity, we have some that have to travel quite far for board meetings monthly. And so we've landed on a compromise where we're going to do 4 in-person meetings so people can still have that person-to-person connection, especially for those that desire it. And then subsequent other board meetings, like the other 6 to 8 that we end up having per year, will be virtual. So we're not blending the specific meeting, but we're blending the meeting schedule over time. So.
Thank you, Greg. That's really interesting. And Katie, your advice about setting expectations was super helpful too. I think that's right. That was helpful both for me as a facilitator and for meeting participants. Yeah. So.
Well, let me add that for at least our county board meetings, they've had it being virtual. And if it was a public meeting, you couldn't comment except for the very beginning anyways, but people get to listen and in a way that you wouldn't be able to without that. So I'm hoping that aspect is going to continue, of having people being able to listen in on meetings. You are not necessarily able to participate because you wouldn't have been anyways, even if you're in person, except for the first 3 minutes, which you can do online, but it's created an accessibility that was never there before this.
Yeah.
And so right now, board members can meet virtually because of the executive order, but once it goes back to normal after the pandemic is over, whenever that is, then we have the commissioners that are meeting remotely have to include their address on the notice for the meeting, and they have to open their home up or wherever they're at to the public because it's a public meeting. So right now it's been very easy, because they don't have to be there and they're allowed to meet virtually. But if that came up, that could change things. So right now our board has been getting together in person, but we have everybody else for the most part virtual. And I kind of hope we keep that going just because our office is kind of small. And
yeah.
I know myself, I go to all the EDA meetings, and a lot of times I just prefer to be online because I'm not really an active participant, sometime I am.
That's ours too. The board is all face to face, but other people can be on and virtually and listen. And I think that's terrific. I hope that keeps going.
The other thing in the county is when we did have the first CARES funding, the county beefed up their computer equipment and things for public health, especially, and they don't intend to have them in the office all the time. They'll be remote working, probably the largest department that will have that option.
What are people's plans for delivering digital training now? Are people, a lot of times you do the e-commerce training or digital literacy training and so on. Is there things happening in your communities moving in that direction?
So Bill, we've learned that a lot of the that has been one area that I think is going to be a harder shift to make, is that we've offered a lot of Zoom training for people, whether it was on PPP or, CARES Act funding or grant applications or digital marketing, customer service. We've offered a number of training, and we've learned that people want the access to it. So we've recorded, and now we're building a digital library of that where we wouldn't have had that in the past. I think we'll continue, for us, continue to offer that and build that as a resource versus you have to be at the event or at an event or at a luncheon to get this information. And I think that's been a good mind shift for us to make, is to continue to offer that digitally. I know, when we talk about get-togethers and gatherings, we're doing a networking we've done Chamber Cafe, which has been a networking event that we've done via Zoom for the last year. And we've had, in person, we were 60 to 70 people. We actually exceeded that virtually. So we've had members from outside the region be able to Zoom in, where they could listen in and get connected. We're going to in person, and at this point, we don't have the technology or the hardware to do it virtually. So I'm gonna try to figure out how we can make that shift so that we can still share that information. I don't want to make it be inaccessible. As Bernadine mentioned, the access to the meetings or to the networking or to the technology or to the training. I think we've learned through technology we can make things more accessible and reusable too. Rather than hiring a trainer to present 4 times, let's do it once and then keep that as a resource.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, we had some training put on by our local regional development commission along with SBDC and the Women's Business Alliance. And they had 108 people sign up. It's a 5-county area. But also in each of the 5 counties, they had a place for the hybrid for virtual groups. And ours was the biggest, and we had 5 people there. And 3 of us were SBDC related people. So really 2 businesses. A couple other places had 2 or 3 people. And so obviously out of the 108 that signed up, the great majority preferred the virtual process.
Mhm.
And it was very difficult because we were supposed to get into small groups and talk. And because so many people were virtual, they were talking over us. And we were trying to listen to them and still have our conversation. So a lot of things to think about if you want to do a hybrid training session like that. Overall, it was fine, but if I knew there were only going to be 5 of us, I would have stayed at my office.
Yeah, for sure.
We're still trying to figure that out. One of the things that we talked about at our last steering committee meeting, though, is, and I think we've got it reserved, is we're going to have a broadband community booth at the county fair in August. Ours isn't until August, and have it staffed by the new fellow that hasn't been hired yet. But just to check in with people to see what they're thinking, what their needs are. And as you know, the broadband stuff is very complicated to explain to people. So we're going to have a booth at the county fair this time. I think that's going to be a great way to get some feedback in terms of what people are looking for.
Well, this has been really interesting and helpful for me, this part of the conversation. I hope it has been for others too. It's interesting to hear all the different approaches and adaptations. And there is a lot to think about trying to get this right, because there's a cost benefit to the online thing for sure. Well, with my on the clock, I did want to just share with you, I had not so much an announcement, I guess it's sort of an invitation. It's maybe the best way to frame this. And it has to do with our statewide broadband conference, which I think everybody on the call is probably familiar with and hopefully has attended in the past. I think it's right, Mary, this is our 17th that we're, not that we're counting, but we sort of are.
Depends on how you count it. Yeah.
So our annual broadband conference, and our team did decide, kind of apropos of this conversation, that we're going to have a virtual conference. 3 days, 3 mornings, 2 hours, the 12th, 13th, and 14th. Is that right, Mary? Did I get that right?
October 12th through 14th.
And the theme of our conference this year, we're calling it Building on Broadband, Inspiring Progress. Building on Broadband, Inspiring Progress. So we're just getting to the point now. Mary's been working hard to get the webpage up and save the date and stuff coming up, but now you know the dates. What I wanted to talk to you about was kind of a new piece conceptually of this, and that is that together with the RDCs and the MIFs across the state, Blandon is collaborating to co-host a series of regional broadband gatherings that are going to kind of lead up to and roll up to the statewide meeting, in the sense that on one of the 3 days of the statewide meeting, we're going to have a pull representatives from each of the regional meetings together and kind of reflect on what's going on across the state, what themes are emerged in the regional gatherings. But back to the regional gatherings, we're like I said, the MIFs and the RDCs are taking the lead on putting together these series of meetings in the 3 to 4 weeks immediately leading up to the conference. So we kind of want to build a little bit of sense of momentum and things happening together. So each of those regional meetings will be sort of lightly branded as part of a larger statewide thing. And we are just, the teams have been formed, and so nice to have Greg with us today. West Central Initiative Foundation is taking the lead on their region because of course they're unique, being both an RDC and a MIF. And the Northwest up there, Northwest Minnesota Foundation, the Headwaters and the EDC are working together, and the Arrowhead and so forth. So I wanted to just make you guys aware that those planning teams are coming together now, and the idea is to showcase kind of needs or opportunity. I wanted to share with you kind of our thinking at Blandon about what we're trying to accomplish here. So for the statewide conference, the roll-up meeting, you know, we really want to help people have a view, bird's eye view of successful work underway across the state to advance broadband access, adoption, affordability, and use. And we want to help create a shared sense of urgency about these increasing gaps, because of course, as broadband gets better in some places, those without are falling further and further behind. So we want to help create a sense of that the gap, this gap and opportunity gap, is threatening and getting worse. And then we want to really focus on centering and showcasing young adults, sort of 30 and under. We're looking at ways creatively to bring them forward and invite them to lead sessions. And we think they're great spokespeople for the future, speaking to leaders today about how they just expect that there's a web tone out there, you know, and that their broadband is going to be part of their world. And then we also want to help, you know, the way as much as we can through some creative facilitation and design, help people connect meaningfully with one another, even though it's a virtual event. And the real, you know, in the audience for that is, you know, mostly our you guys, our community broadband champions. People have been doing the work so they can see one another, see the sort of ecosystem of broadband work. Now, the regional gatherings, as we're seeing it, and allowing for, of course, the differentiation between regions and so forth, it's an opportunity to really ring the bell of your local township and county and city officials and business leaders. Because as we know that with the funding that, you know, it's really important that local communities have their oar in the water, that they're contributing financially and otherwise. And to have a more local event, we thought would be easier to get those local officials in the room, so to speak, virtually or in person. And apropos the conversation we just had, I know already that we're going to see a real blend of in-person or virtual events. In Southern Minnesota, Tim Penny's shop, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, and Region 9 are working together with a couple other local business organizations, and they're going to do a virtual event. I know in East Central Minnesota, 7W, they're talking more about probably an in-person event. So it's really going to depend on what people feel fits the region. And I just wanted you guys to be aware of this opportunity. And if you'd like, you know, because right, the opportunities to feature cool stuff that's going on in terms of broadband access, adoption, and use, and broadband fueled economic development and vitality. You guys have great stories to tell. And I would just love to, the degree to which you have appetite, and Greg's listening in because he's got his own team he's got to pull together, to make you, for them to see you as a resource and for you guys to see those meetings as a resource. So I guess my ask today is to just kind of, I'm going to send you as a follow-up to this, an email that lists the sort of the conveners, the callers of these regional meetings, across the state so that you'd have an opportunity to connect up with them and raise your hand to that team if you're willing to be part of planning and delivering content about broadband in your regions. Questions, concerns?
Good job. That's good timing.
Okay.
And, you know, and then in addition to doing that, you know, providing content at those regional meetings, we're going to feature one of the 3 mornings that we're having our October 12th through 14th conference. We're going to feature, one of those days is going to feature the, you know, kind of a roll up of the regional gatherings to give people a picture of what's going on around the whole state. But for the rest of the content, those 6 hours, we're hoping that it's going to be RFP driven. You'll see that I gave you a preview of the webpage and the chat box. I'm going to be making that a little bit more public this week. But, you know, if there's anything that you want to present to the entire conference, you know, that fill out a request for proposals. We'd love to hear from you all. Especially interactive sessions. We're also going to try to push the whole, make a little short video about your community, you know, what's helped and hindered you in the past year, that kind of thing. So we hope to see a lot of those.
And talent, we found out that Carl Menke is a musician. Who knew? And he has a family band who did COVID inspired songs and songwriting. So I'm hoping maybe Carl will perform for us. So and Anna's always inspiring us to be creative and, you know, music, theater, poetry, limericks, inspiration, engagement. That's what we're after. So, well, I see that we've come up to 4:30. I want to just give everybody a chance to just say a final word about what you're walking away from today. Was this a good idea? And how are you feeling about our conversation today? Katie, would you start us out?
Yeah, I'm feeling really good. I actually really, really appreciate these meetings. This one snuck up on me a little bit. Mary sent the agenda and it popped up on my calendar and I thought, oh, good. That was my response to it. It's nice to touch base. Sometimes in our community, we've settled into 4 projects, and each of those projects is sort of working at a different pace. Each one is working with a different group of people. And I'm just finding that the more focus and attention and reoccurring meetings I'm having on any of this is just better for all of them. And, you know, as we're rounding up on the final few months of being a BBC community, I just really appreciate this time. So thanks for pulling us together.
Thanks, Katie. Nancy, final reflection?
Yeah, I find it great to be comparing notes like today in regards to the ARP. I feel like I'm not alone in not knowing what the rules are yet, and it's good to hear because we're all kind of on the same page, and I know I'm not behind, that I'm just along for as well as everyone else. So I appreciate sharing notes.
Good. Sarah?
I would echo Katie and just say it's a good time to, you know, set aside time. I feel like everyone kind of runs a mile a minute or 10 miles a minute around this time, and it's good to just have time to really be strategic in thought and connect on it. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Thomas?
Well, first and foremost for me, I'm just glad I was able to be here today. Like I said, I think this is the first one I've been able to attend. So again, thanks to Courtney for everything that she's done with this project and for being involved from day one and continuing to work on it even as she's left economic development. So thank you for that, Courtney. And just kind of echoing everyone else, it's good to hear other people's perspectives. Also hear, you know, any success stories, any struggles that they've had. So, you know, you're not alone, you know, if you are struggling in certain areas, or if you don't have all the information. So it's always good to hear perspective, always good to hear from other people and realize that you're not alone when it comes to a lot of these things. So thanks everyone for sharing today.
I'm glad you could be with us, Thomas. Lisa?
So yeah, I agree with everyone else. Getting together and just sharing where we're at, what we've accomplished, and what we know, especially on the ARP funding, and getting some little tidbits of ideas. I have notes all over my planner here on things to follow up on. So I appreciate all that insight. And of course, I do want to invite folks, as you have summer vacation and are traveling and looking for destinations, I invite you to visit West Central Minnesota Otter Tail County. Stop into Fergus Falls. Again, if this was like behind me or in front of me, is the Otter Tail River. You can enjoy our new Wi-Fi, our public Wi-Fi on the patio, and you can see what's happening or hear what's happening across the river with our downtown riverfront development construction project that has just started. So please, I personally invite you to come visit Fergus Falls this summer. Be happy to show you around, whether virtually or in person.
What a model ambassador you are to your community. We talk here in Grand Rapids, we say it's a Chamber of Commerce day today. Beautiful day out there. Great. Barbara, how about you? Reflection as we close.
Well, it's very helpful to get regrounded because especially with all the changes, it's easy to get ungrounded, and it helps to this is very timely, very great for sharing. I will share a couple of fun things. I was distracted a little bit by, I'm actually staying with a friend who has a standard poodle breeding group. And so there were 2 5-month-old standards staring at me a few times. It got me a little distracted. And we're going to wineries, and I'm planning to do a collaboration between one of my friends, vintners here, and the lead vintner that we have at next chapter, and see if we can do some collaboration about how they do their labeling here and have families that come in and do stuff. And so I'm working on economic development with the wine industry in Leicester County. So that'll be great fun.
Thanks. Courtney.
Well, Tom took everything I was going to say because he just had to come to the meeting. No, I'm just kidding. But no, basically what Tom said, I enjoy hearing what everyone else is doing. It's a lot different from, there's some of the same, but there's also a lot different from what we do here as a tribe. So it's always definitely interesting to hear. And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Courtney. Glad you were there even though you're driving. And Greg, last word to you.
Oh geez, I'm like at a ditto now, but I'm just glad we were able to connect. I've been embarrassingly disengaged with this project a little too much, and so especially hearing both from White Earth and Otter Tail County on their projects, just simply because part of White Earth is in our region and Otter Tail County as well. So great to connect with everyone, and I look forward to more good stuff on broadband work to come.
Yeah, you're doomed to work on broadband with us, Greg, for the fall meetings, but we'll make sure that's a lot of fun. And Mary has put together a project matrix. Do you want to say just a quick word about that, Mary, so people could know about that?
Oh, they all know. I think everyone here knows about that. Well, most everyone here knows about that, but yeah, our famous project matrices. I did put one together for this group. I'm gonna paste the link to the page it's located on in the chat box right here, but it's kind of and I think it's been reviewed by all the teams and everyone says it's fine. I know some of you haven't allocated all your funds, so if you haven't done that, you need to do that by the end of the year. So get at it, and we'll keep updating this as we close out the cohort.
Yeah, it's a handy dandy cheat sheet if you ever want to reference for yourself or others what the other communities are doing. It's like an annotated description. So
just scroll down to the bottom and you're the first attachment at the bottom of the page. Feel
Thanks,
free to
everybody.
share away.
It was great to be with you today. Thanks for coming and all you do. Hats off to you. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Going to drink wine.